Scott Peters. I graduated in 1962 with a degree in business administration. When I think back to my time at BNC, so many names come to mind. One person that I feel like I have to mention is a lady pastor named Augusta Graham. Every church she pastored, she talked to parents of children about the importance of Christian education and that they should get that Christian education at BNC. So from the time I was in grade school, I knew I was going to BNC if I was able to go to college. Professors have to be mentioned, and I think of Drs. Floyd, Dobson, of course my major professor, Dr. Elmer Schellenbarger, people like Dr. Danskin, who were a special friend to me in some difficult times. I also think of fellow students who were living for the Lord, and many who became close friends and even years later were still friends. I really have to mention someone else that maybe had the biggest impact on my life. A beautiful girl from Dallas, Texas named Marilyn Wicker agreed to marry me 54 years ago. She's really been my rock. She's been my partner in all the decisions we've had to make, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. From this point in my life, when I look back on the memorable times, it really has to do with the things I learned. It has to do with getting grounded spiritually and maturing spiritually, and that came largely through speakers that I was exposed to through the church, chapel, of course Dr. Phillips, and the professors I've just mentioned. Dr. Elmer Schellenbarger mentioned something in a business class that caused me to think I might want to work for a property and casualty insurance company, and I did that. I worked for a small company for a few years, and then in Dallas, Texas, and then a classmate from college recruited me to come to Allstate. I spent 25 years there. I started in Dallas, went to Atlanta, spent the last 16 years in Chicago, and I was fortunate that I got into management early in my career. I went on to sit in most of the chairs that you sit in as you progress up toward higher management. And I was very fortunate to end up in a top management job in Chicago. But the real highlights of my career had to do with people I worked with, and especially people that worked for me. I got great enjoyment out of mentoring people, particularly young managers. I was able to see some of these people go on to top management jobs. Some even surpassed where I had been in those days. And I got real joy from that. What led to us going abroad, going to England to work, was our relationship with a couple in our church in Chicago. He became the international director of Arab World Ministries, the office based in Worthing, England. About the time we retired, he started recruiting us to come and work. And while we had not been called to be missionaries, we knew immediately this is what we should be doing. And our job evolved to managing a guest house. And managing meant doing all the work. It was a large guest house. We could house 30 people in there overnight. Missionaries, particularly for training, for R&R, for meetings. We ran a lot of short-term missionaries through there, students that were coming through interested in missions training. We also had other Christian groups in there. We also met some natives from the Middle East who had accepted Christ and had to flee the countries for their very lives. Some of them barely escaped, and they could never go back home. When you see this and get to know these people, you realize that Jesus Christ really is powerful, and personal. I think often about what Jesus said, whatever you've done for these brothers and sisters of mine, you've done for me. And I find that convicting, and I find that motivating to continue to serve in whatever way I can.